I went to the country with my boyfriend to get away for the summer. A few days in, he ditched me for his old flame. He just left me at his homophobic childhood friend's house and didn't contact me for 2 whole months. Then, after his old flame dumped him again, he finally remembered me and called. "What are you doing, babe?" Feeding the dog." My voice cracked. "Baby." A deep voice murmured in my ear. "Am I your dog? When are you coming back?" I texted Jason, sitting on a little stool on the porch. "Soon." About 15 minutes later, a message popped up on my phone. "Be good and wait for me there. But what's so important that you had to rush back like that?" Another 15 minutes passed after I sent that one before my phone lit up again. I opened the message. Just a few words. Just some family stuff. That again. It was Jason's go-to answer for that question. I tried to reassure myself. We hadn't been together that long after all. Maybe we just weren't at the point of telling each other everything yet. Or maybe it was something about his family he couldn't just tell an outsider, which was why he was always so vague. "Well, hurry back as soon as you're done," I typed out. This time, Jason replied instantly. "Okay." I stared at the 2 curt, business-like words on the screen, a strange feeling creeping into my heart. "Still haven't fed the chickens?" A cold voice snapped beside me, slacking off again. I looked up to see Caleb standing over me, a look of pure disapproval on his face. "Right, I'm on it." I grabbed the small basin of corn kernels next to me and hurried toward the chicken coop. This was a quiet, charming little town down south. I'd come here with my boyfriend, Jason, to escape the summer heat. We were staying at his childhood friend's grandma's place. I fell in love with it the moment we arrived. I was constantly begging Jason to go catch crayfish in the river with me or pick fruit in the hills. Jason went along with it, having his friend Caleb lead the way and spending every day running wild with me all over town. But the good times didn't last. We'd only been there a few days, and I was still getting settled in when he had to leave for an emergency, booking a flight that same night. He promised he'd take care of things quickly and come back for me. But a week had gone by, and he still wasn't back. The day after he left, a huge storm hit the town. It rained nonstop for a week, and we heard there were landslides on many of the roads outside. And that was the day Caleb started giving me a hard time, sometimes openly, sometimes subtly. Jason had told me before that his friend wasn't much of a talker and that I shouldn't take it personally, so I came prepared. For the first few days, when it was the 3 of us, Caleb didn't seem much different from Jason's other friends. If I had to point something out, it was just that he was a bit quiet. He was probably just putting on a good face for Jason. But ever since Jason left, the guy dropped the act completely. His blank expression turned to impatience. His polite tone became icy cold. He refused to eat with me and would just go back to his room at night without a word. He also assigned me chores, making me responsible for feeding the chickens and herding the ducks every day. "If you don't finish with the chickens and ducks, you don't eat," he said bluntly. "We don't support freeloaders here." I was a guest in his house, so I couldn't really say anything. I just figured, while feeding the chickens, that he was probably just naturally homophobic. I figured out Caleb was homophobic on my second night there. After my shower, I put my clothes in the washing machine, planning to wash them with everyone else's once they were all done. But when Caleb came out after his shower and saw my clothes in the machine, his face changed instantly. "Can you please wash your clothes separately?" he asked, looking at me with disgust. "Why?" I asked, confused. "You're asking me why?" His brow furrowed even deeper, the words "stay away from me" practically written on his forehead. I looked at his face and my mind put 2 and 2 together. It wasn't the first time I'd run into this over the years. Got it. From that day on, my clothes never touched theirs. Besides that, he also couldn't stand it when I got teary-eyed. Even though I'm a guy, I've always been a bit of a crier. The smallest thing can set me off. The first time Caleb saw me about to cry was when I got a small cut from a thorn on a bush up in the hills. I knew it wasn't a real injury, but I just couldn't help it, and my eyes started to well up. TSK. Just as Jason was comforting me, Caleb made a sound of annoyance. I looked over and saw him looking completely fed up. The downpour continued. I walked over to the chicken coop under my umbrella and got ready to feed the chickens. I'd been doing this for a week, so the chickens and ducks knew my arrival meant food. They all crowded around as soon as they saw me. "Eat up," I said, scattering the corn kernels. "Grow up big and strong." The coop was filled with clucking. "So I can eat you." Still more clucking. After pouring the rest of the kernels into the feeder, I watched them eat for a bit before heading back. The coop wasn't far from the main house, maybe a 30-second walk. I had just opened my umbrella and taken a few steps when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I shifted the basin to my other arm and pulled out my phone. There was a new message. I unlocked it as I walked, seeing it was from a group chat. One of Jason's friends had added me to it when we were all hanging out once. But I'd never said a word in it. Jason probably didn't even know I was in there. I tapped it open as I walked, curious to see what they were talking about. But the moment the message loaded, I was so shocked by the content that I froze on the spot. 2 seconds later, I couldn't even hold my umbrella, and the basin fell to the ground with a clang. A picture of Jason hugging a guy I didn't recognize was staring back at me from my phone screen. "Congrats to Jason for finally landing the one that got away." A message followed below it. I stared at the picture, then read and reread the caption, my mind racing, wondering if today was some kind of sick April Fool's Day. But unfortunately, it was the middle of a hot summer. No April Fool's Day in sight. "Congrats, Jason. You've been dreaming of this for years. And you finally did it. That's my boy, Jason. You made your old man proud. Get a room already." The chat blew up with congratulations for Jason. They all tacitly ignored the fact that he already had a boyfriend, and they were all weirdly in sync about this other guy being his one that got away. My head was buzzing. I couldn't even feel the heavy rain soaking me to the bone. Messages were still popping up on my screen like a live feed, but I couldn't see them clearly anymore. My damn tendency to cry kicked in, and within half a minute of seeing the message, the tears just started streaming down my face, pathetically. As I stood there, completely lost, the phone was suddenly snatched from my hand. I looked up numbly to see Caleb picking up the fallen umbrella and holding it over my head. He didn't say a word, his brow still slightly furrowed, but he reached out and wiped away the tears that were already mixed with the rain. "Let's go home," he said, his voice still harsh. "Go change," Caleb said once we were back inside. I nodded blankly and walked toward the bedroom. The moment I closed the door, the tears I had been desperately holding back because of Caleb's presence came flooding out again. My phone was gone, but I could imagine the group chat was still buzzing with activity. Maybe Jason had joined in by now, laughing and making shy but happy comments. Or maybe the person who added me had suddenly realized I was there and had already kicked me out in a panic. Either way, the truth was obvious. I was just a distraction for Jason while he was pining for someone else. I've never been one to cling, but the thought that a relationship I had genuinely invested in had ended like this still made me feel a pang of regret and pain. As I was sobbing and my thoughts were spiraling, the bedroom door suddenly opened, and Caleb walked in, looking like the whole world owed him $1 million. I quickly wiped my face, trying to explain. But before I could, he strode over, grabbed my arm with one hand, and ripped off my soaked shirt with the other. "What are you?" I didn't even get to finish. In the blink of an eye, I was stripped completely naked. "What the hell are you doing?" Even though we were both guys, we barely knew each other, and he hated gay people. There was no way I could just stand there naked in front of him. I quickly turned my back to him. But then I remembered my ass was also bare, so I frantically tried to cover it with one hand. It wasn't working. I looked around in a panic and finally saw the floor-length curtains. Like I'd found a lifeline, I scrambled behind them to hide. I must have looked ridiculous because when I peeked my head out from behind the curtain, I thought I saw the corner of Caleb's mouth twitch into a slight smile. But when he saw me looking, his expression immediately went back to stone. "Get out here," he ordered like a strict parent. "I can't come out right now," I whimpered. "Hurry up," Caleb said, sounding impatient. "It might be summer, but the rain here is colder than in the city. You go out first. I'll get dressed myself in a bit." "I go out?" Caleb tilted his head. "And let you just stand in here sniveling by yourself?" Who was sniveling? But I was speechless. Aside from the dramatic adverb, he wasn't wrong. Seeing I wasn't moving, Caleb turned and pulled some clothes from the closet, then walked toward me. Get dressed. I'll watch you, he said, handing me the clothes. I can dress myself, I said, taking the clothes. You don't have to. No, I'm watching you. How am I supposed to get dressed with you watching me? I was exasperated. Caleb was even more so. You're already hiding back there. What's the problem? It's different. Just go out. We were at a standstill. I insisted he leave, but he clearly didn't trust me to actually get dressed and insisted on staying. Finally, Caleb's patience wore thin. What, he gets to see you, but I don't. The argument had distracted me for a moment, but hearing him say that, I froze, and the lump in my throat came back. Why did you have to bring that up? My voice started to crack again. But remembering how much Caleb hated seeing me cry, I quickly rubbed my eyes and started putting on the clothes. The tension in the room was thick. Caleb didn't say another word. After I changed, we sat in silence for a long time, one of us in the bedroom, the other in the living room. After a while, I finally got up, pulled my suitcase out of the closet, and started packing. What are you doing? Caleb asked, coming in when he heard the noise. Packing, I said, folding a shirt. You're leaving? Yeah. I paused. Given the circumstances, it's probably not a good idea for me to impose any longer. This pouring rain, the roads are washed out from landslides. How are you going to leave? His words made me stop. He was right. It was all over the news. The landslides in the area were bad, and villagers were being told to stay home. But, I said quietly after a moment, it's not right for me to stay here either. What's not right about it? Am I not feeding you? Are you lacking anything? No, but I don't have anything to do here. I might as well. Who said you have nothing to do? Caleb cut me off. Are the chickens and ducks fed for the day? Are the green beans in the kitchen snapped? Are the clothes from the washer hung up to dry? I opened my mouth but had no comeback. From that day on, my daily chores expanded beyond feeding chickens and herding ducks. I now had to snap beans, wash dishes, hang laundry, and mop the floors. Basically, if there was a chore to be seen, it was my chore. If there was a chore that couldn't be seen, that was mine too. For example, he actually made me cut up a breadcrumb that was too big for the ants to carry. Why? I was baffled. They can't move it, so you have to help them, right? It's raining so hard. All these big and little ants have nothing to eat. Aren't you worried? I stared at him, speechless, then resentfully took the small knife he handed me and walked over to the colony of ants at the base of the wall. Cut it into smaller pieces, but not too small. Caleb stood behind me like a foreman, giving instructions. If it's too small, they'll have to make too many trips back and forth. That's a waste of ant power. And stay here until they've moved it all. Find their home, and then bring them some more of the bread from the table and leave it at their doorstep. This rain is going to last for days. They need to stock up. For a whole week, he kept finding similarly ridiculous tasks for me to do. A week later, the rain started to let up. Alex, Caleb's next-door neighbor, came over and said he'd found a new creek full of fish and shrimp and asked if we wanted to go catch some. When I first got here, I was thrilled by the idea of catching shrimp in the river. But now, the thought of it only reminded me of the time Jason was with me. Sure, Caleb said. We've been cooped up for a week or two. It'll be good to get some fresh air. I think I'll pass, I said, still hesitant. We don't support freeloaders here, Caleb said, pulling out his favorite line. Defeated, I had no choice but to change and follow them to the creek. Alex was right, it was an amazing secret spot. Even though it had just rained heavily, the water was surprisingly clear. The lush greenery all around made the air feel fresh and crisp. We spent half the afternoon messing around in the creek, and the bucket we brought was almost full. Let's head back, Caleb suggested, looking at our haul. Neither Alex nor I had any objections, so we started to get out of the water. But who would have thought that on the very last step, I wasn't looking and stepped right onto a mossy rock. The result was, with a splash, I fell right back into the river. What happened? Caleb saw it and rushed over, pulling me out of the water in one swift motion. That fall really hurt, and of course my waterworks started up again. Caleb, I said, leaning on him to stand up, my vision blurry with tears. It hurts so much. Caleb carried me back on his back. On the bed in the bedroom, I was once again stripped down to nothing but my underwear. And even then, I had to fight tooth and nail just to keep my boxers on. "Don't move," Caleb said, kneeling on the bed next to my thigh. "Tell me if it hurts." I nodded and mumbled a MHM. Then came a slight stinging pain. Couldn't help but flinch. "Hurts?" Caleb stopped and asked. "I'm fine." Even though I said that, Caleb's movements became much gentler. Then I felt a cool breeze on my leg. He was blowing on the wound as he applied medicine. I hadn't broken any bones, but I had several minor scrapes all over my body. After treating my thigh, he moved on to my forearm and back, and finally my chest. "I can do it myself," I said, sitting up quickly. That spot was just too awkward. But Caleb dodged my hand as I reached for the medicine. "Sit still," he said, his voice carrying a sternness that made it impossible to disobey. After a failed attempt, I gave up and sat there, letting him treat the wound. I don't know if it was because he's a bit nearsighted, but he leaned in very close while cleaning the cut. If I looked down, all I could see was the top of his head right at my chest. "Are you done yet?" "I'm gay." This kind of proximity was inevitably awkward, so I had to rush him. But Caleb didn't answer. I waited patiently for a little longer, then couldn't help but ask again, "Is it clean?" This time he finally answered, "Done." His voice sounded different from usual. It was a blessing in disguise. I was finally exempt from feeding chickens and herding ducks. I no longer had to help ants move their home or count the plums on the tree in the front yard to see if any were missing. Caleb wouldn't let me do anything. He even brought my meals to me. After a week or two of being pampered like this, the scabs on my scrapes fell off, new skin grew in, and I was pretty much healed. Alex was relieved to see I was better. He felt that if he hadn't insisted we go that day, I wouldn't have fallen. I told him multiple times it wasn't his fault, but the guy was stubborn and couldn't shake the guilt. When he saw I was healed, he cooked a huge meal at his place as an apology. "I'm really sorry," Alex said. "When the weather gets better, I'll definitely take you to an even better spot." "It's really fine," I said again. Alex nodded and then handed us each a glass of wine. Actually, besides apologizing, I also wanted to ask Caleb for a favor. "What's up?" Caleb asked. "Well, I have a few friends in the village below. Their houses are right up against the mountain, which isn't very safe, so they're thinking of crashing at my place for a few days. But my place is so small. I was thinking we could split into two groups. One group sleeps at my place, and the other group, including me, could crash on the floor at your place." Caleb's house actually had 3 bedrooms. I was in one, he was in another, and the third was his grandmother's. His grandmother was currently staying with his aunt. But it felt wrong to disturb an old lady's room. "It's fine. You can have my room. Leo and I will share," Caleb said with a wave of his hand. "Leo, that's me. You mind?" he asked, turning to me. And no, of course not. I was a guest myself. What right did I have to mind? "That's great." Alex quickly poured more wine. "Caleb, man, you're a true friend." Alex's friends arrived that afternoon. They automatically split into 2 groups, and one came over to Caleb's. That night, after we both washed up and got into bed, we lay there in silence for a long time. Other than Jason, I had never slept in the same bed with another guy. I counted 2,583 sheep, but I was still wide awake. "Can't sleep?" Caleb asked in the darkness. No, I answered, feeling a bit guilty. For a good 30 seconds, he didn't say anything. "I'll sleep on the floor," he then said, starting to get up. "Don't," I said, quickly grabbing his arm. "I'm not that delicate. I'm just not used to it yet. I'll be fine in a minute." Caleb didn't insist and lay back down. "Do you like it here?" he asked after a moment. "I love it. The environment is great. The streets are clean. When it's not raining, the river water is crystal clear. The fish and shrimp are huge, and the trees are so green and lush. It just puts you in a good mood." Caleb let out an almost imperceptible MHM. "Do you come back often?" I asked him. "No. I was studying abroad for the past few years and was pretty busy. This year I finally had some time, so I decided to come back for the summer." I asked him where he went to school, what it was like there, and he asked me about my life too. We talked for a long time, so long that I was starting to get sleepy. Why do you cry so much? I heard Caleb ask as I was drifting off. I've always been a crier, I mumbled. Can't help it. He was quiet for a while after I answered. But just as I was about to fall asleep, I faintly heard a voice say, I want to make you cry. When I woke up the next day, I wasn't sure if Caleb had actually said that. A seed of doubt was planted in my mind, but I figured I must have misheard him. Alex's friends were all easy to get along with, and we all hit it off quickly. Since we couldn't go out on rainy days, we all gathered at Caleb's place to watch movies and play games, then cooked huge meals together. We were exhausted every single day. A week later, Alex suggested we have a barbecue. We all pitched in and made a huge, delicious dinner, partying until almost midnight. The water and power are about to shut off, Alex said, glancing at the clock and suddenly realizing how late it was. Let's wash up in pairs to save time. Everyone agreed. Caleb and I were paired up and ended up being the last ones. With 5 minutes left before the shutdown, we both went into the bathroom. We gotta hurry, he said, pulling off his t-shirt with one hand, showing none of the reservations of a supposed homophobe. Under the dim bathroom light, his 8-pack was on full display, his pants hanging loosely on his narrow waist. Oh, okay, I said, quickly turning my back to him and slowly starting to undress. Before I could even get my shirt off, a stream of water hit me. Let's just do it together, he said, pulling me under the shower head. We only have a few minutes. We stood under the cramped shower head and started to rinse off. He was taller than me, and his warm breath fanned across my neck. We both tried to be as quick as possible, just planning for a quick rinse. But with two of us, just as Caleb was about to turn off the faucet, the bathroom light went out without warning. Instantly, the small room was plunged into darkness. Easy, Caleb said, grabbing my arm. Yeah, okay, I replied, trying to reach for a towel. But the bathroom was small and dark, and we had been huddled together under the water. Before I took 2 steps, I bumped right into something. I reached out a hand to feel and realized it was Caleb. My hand had landed right on his waist. Sorry, I said, quickly pulling my hand back and stepping away. But I only took a couple of steps back before I bumped into something behind me and lost my footing. Just as I was about to eat shit, a strong hand wrapped around my waist. The next thing I knew, I was pulled into an embrace. Thanks, I said quickly. Caleb didn't say anything. You can let me go now, I said again. The person holding me was still silent. This wasn't right. He was straight, a homophobic straight guy at that. This was not how he should be reacting. Caleb? I asked tentatively. Leo, he finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Do you still love Jason? I froze for a second, then shook my head. Realizing he probably couldn't see me, I said, no, I don't. Then, could you love me instead? What? Before I could even process his question, he pushed me firmly against the wall. Leo, don't love anyone else. Love me, okay? Aren't you? I wanted to say, aren't you homophobic? But he cut me off again. Don't wash your clothes with other guys, don't cry in front of other guys, and don't ever sleep in the same bed with anyone else. I listened to his domineering confession in a daze, my mind completely blank. Aren't you homophobic? I finally managed to ask after a long silence. Caleb seemed taken aback by my question. He froze for a moment, then, looking completely pissed off, leaned in suggestively. You think I'm homophobic? I didn't know how to respond to Caleb's confession. That night, I slept fitfully, curled up on the very edge of the bed. The next day, I started using Alex's friends as an excuse to spend all my time at his house, even eating all my meals there. By the time I got back at night, Caleb was already asleep. This went on for about 4 or 5 days. After the 5th day, Alex's friends were getting ready to leave and decided to pull an all-nighter. As usual, I stayed with them until late before heading back, deliberately spending extra time in the bathroom to make sure Caleb was fast asleep. But to my surprise, as soon as I lay down in bed, I heard a voice next to me. You've been avoiding me for days. Have you thought it over? What are you talking about? I said, my back to him, pretending I didn't know what he meant. Leo. But he wouldn't give up. He grabbed me, turned me onto my back, and then rolled on top of me. Give me a chance. Please? It was the height of summer, and the insects outside were chirping away. In the faint light, I could see Caleb staring down at me. His sharply defined features seemed incredibly intense at that moment. Well, I turned my face away from him. What are your selling points? In what sense? He asked, tilting my chin back to make me look at him. In general, I said vaguely. Caleb looked at me for a long moment, then said, word by word, the only place I'll ever make you cry again is in bed. You son of a… Before I could finish my curse, a searing kiss fell on my lips. Caleb was like a seasoned pro, instantly prying my lips apart and stealing my breath. Half a month, I said, finally pushing him away when I couldn't take it anymore. What's half a month? We have half a month left. Then you go back to school and we break up. In the darkness, Caleb stared at me for a long time before finally saying, okay. The next morning, I was woken up by Caleb's kisses. Why are you up so early? I grumbled, rolling over, wanting to go back to sleep. I got up and made breakfast. Let me sleep a little longer. I was too tired to open my eyes. Caleb didn't say anything, just got back into bed, wrapped his arms around me, and started kissing the back of my neck. His movements were light, feather-like, and incredibly ticklish. Are you doing this on purpose? I said, pushing him away. He still didn't speak, just started nibbling on my ear. Okay. I'm up, I said, sitting up to escape his grasp. After using the bathroom, I started brushing my teeth, and he was back, clinging to me again. He hugged me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. You're so clingy, Caleb. He disagreed. I'm not clingy. I'm just clingy with you. I laughed but didn't pay him any mind. But as I spit out the last of the toothpaste, he grabbed my chin, turned my face toward him, and kissed me again. Caleb's kisses could be incredibly dominant, but at other times they were impossibly gentle. I couldn't help but turn and wrap my arms around him, and he immediately lifted me onto the bathroom counter. Say my name, Caleb whispered against my lips. But before I could speak, he silenced me again with another unreasonable kiss. A few days later, the rain that had lasted almost the entire summer finally stopped. The sun came out, brightening the whole town. But since it was late August, even the sunny days were pleasantly cool. Caleb said there would be fresh mushrooms in the mountains after the rain, so he took me with him to pick some. As we walked up the mountain, we were surrounded by vast stretches of forest, like something out of a fairy tale. This would be a great place to hook up outside, I said suddenly. What did you say? Caleb was so shocked he almost slipped. He turned around, his eyes dark as he looked at me. I shrugged innocently. It's true. Caleb's mouth twitched with annoyance, and he started walking again, faster this time. With his long legs and narrow waist, I couldn't keep up after a few steps, so I found a large rock and sat down. They say the view from the top is always better, and looking down from the mountain, the scenery was indeed incredible. As I was enjoying the view, Caleb, who had already walked quite a distance, came rushing back. He leaned down, bracing his arms on either side of me, trapping me in his embrace. Are you trying to seduce me? He asked, his voice hoarse. Yes, I said, meeting his gaze. Is it working? For a split second, Caleb's breath hitched. Then, an all-consuming kiss crashed down on me. You asshole, I muttered a few moments later, starting to regret my decision as I began to curse him. I told you I'd make you cry, Caleb whispered, nibbling on my earlobe. If our story were written down, the events of the next few days could probably only be published in certain corners of the internet. Caleb was like a dog, wild and shameless, and he barely let me out of bed. I was still in his arms when Jason's call came through. Hey, babe, where are you? Jason asked as if nothing had happened. At Caleb's place, I answered, trying to even out my breathing. Oh good. Babe, I'm so sorry. I've been swamped with family stuff lately. I haven't been able to check in. I'll come pick you up. School's about to start anyway. No, you don't have to. Jason was silent on the other end for a moment, then asked, Babe, what are you doing? I looked at the head in front of me and managed to force out a few words. Feeding the dog. A dog? Where'd a dog come from? Caleb doesn't have a dog. I was about to say something else, but Caleb had already snatched the phone away. Baby, he whispered, leaning in. Am I your dog? Yeah, I glared at him. A dog that only knows how to bite. Jason's call was a reminder that the summer was over, and that my half-month deal with Caleb was coming to an end. On our last night, he sat on the bed watching me pack, looking like he wanted to say something several times. Thanks for everything, I said, zipping up my suitcase and turning to him. Leo, Caleb stood up, his face pale. Don't. I cut him off before he could speak. Caleb, whatever you're about to say, please don't. He looked down at me, his deep-set eyes filled with a dark intensity. Let's do it one last time, I said, going up to him and wrapping my arms around his neck. And tomorrow we stop contacting each other. I went straight back to school from Caleb's house. I didn't let him drive me, taking a bus to the airport instead. I didn't bring Jason's luggage with me either. I asked Caleb to mail it to him. Since I left, I haven't received a single message from Caleb. That was our agreement. After 2 days back in the dorm, Jason returned. He brought a huge bag of stuff to apologize and went on and on about all the family matters he had to deal with. I watched this man spew lies, wondering how I could have been so blind. Really? I sneered. Is family stuff what you call fooling around with someone else? I shoved the picture from my phone in his face. Jason, were you just playing me for a fool? Staring at the photo, Jason was speechless for a good 30 seconds before finally saying, No, babe, that's not it. He's just a childhood friend. They were just messing around. I have you. How could I be with anyone else? Are you mad because I was too close to him? I won't do it again. I'll keep my distance. I had never imagined someone could be so shamelessly brazen. If his friend hadn't tipped me off that his old flame had rejected him again and he was probably coming back to me, I might have actually believed a third of his bullshit. Fine. Then let's just say I cheated, I said, unwilling to argue with him. What? I stared at Jason for a few seconds, then said, I slept with Caleb. Just 7 words, but Jason seemed completely unable to process them, frozen on the spot. He's way better than you. Jason, I'm a crier, and you couldn't even manage to make me shed a tear. Fuck. A moment later, Jason's furious shout echoed through the entire building. I stared at Caleb's chat window, debating whether I should apologize. After a day of agonizing, I finally decided to send him a message. Sorry, he knows about us. Caleb replied almost instantly. It's okay. I don't mind. You can say whatever you need to. I stared at the 2 lines on my phone, unsure of how to respond. How have you been? A third line appeared after a moment. I looked at it for a long time but didn't reply. I thought Jason and I would never cross paths again, since we were in different departments and different years. But a week later, an anonymous post appeared on the campus forum, accusing a junior in the journalism department of being promiscuous and insatiable. Although it didn't name me directly, all the descriptions pointed straight at me. Soon, people started pointing and staring at me on the street. When I ate in the cafeteria, people would whisper about me from a distance. A couple of days later, I was even called into my advisor's office for a talk. We respect students' personal lives, but Leo, you need to be more careful. Professor, that's not true. The post is spreading lies. My advisor looked at me and said, I'm glad to hear that. But still, be careful, he added. I knew he didn't believe me. The only person who could have done this was Jason. I was certain of it. I called him, intending to demand he delete the post and clear my name, but found that my number had been blocked. I went to his dorm to find him, but his roommate said he'd been staying off campus lately. The situation escalated, and eventually, students from neighboring universities were asking about me. Then, one morning a few days later, I started receiving pictures of male genitalia from various unknown numbers, always followed by filthy, suggestive messages. I couldn't take the harassment anymore and had to turn off my messaging function. But a week later, things took a turn. One morning, a new thread exploded on the forum, all about an audio clip. Did you post that anonymous thread slandering Leo? So what if I did? Who's gonna know? What can you do to me? Those were the 2 most important lines in the audio clip. One voice belonged to Caleb, the other to Jason. Because of this clip, the tide of campus opinion turned on a dime. I knew Leo wasn't that kind of person. I told you guys it wasn't him, but you didn't believe me. People who spread rumors should drop dead. There were many more comments like this, but I hadn't seen a single one when I was the one being slandered. I had to laugh, a bitter, sad little laugh, and then I dialed the police. Took half a week to deal with everything. When I logged back onto the campus forum, the top post had changed. I clicked on it out of boredom and was surprised to see everyone discussing Caleb's voice from the clarification video. Who is that? His voice is so hot. So hot. I want him. If a voice like that woke me up, I could resurrect for a 6 a.m. class, let alone an 8 a.m. OMG, I could get off just listening to his voice. Hey girl, this is the comments section, not your private journal. Not a girl, I'm a bro. We're all sisters here, don't be like that. I found a pair of pants. Anyone lose them? Ha, who wears pants when they're online? The thread went on, but I didn't scroll any further. I closed it and opened Caleb's chat in my messaging app. I typed and deleted my message several times, still unable to send it. I went out to the balcony and just called him directly. Leo, Caleb's deep, strong voice came through the phone. No class? According to the time difference, it should be daytime for him. Caleb paused for a second before answering, no. Then we both fell silent, neither of us knowing what to say. We just stood there, holding our phones, listening to each other's breathing for almost a minute. Finally, I spoke. Caleb, someone said they could get off just listening to your voice. A soft chuckle came from the other end after 3 seconds. Wanna test that theory? I looked up at the sky. Okay. We both laughed. I asked Caleb how he'd been, and he answered all my questions. We talked for almost half an hour. I was telling him about what had been happening at school when he suddenly interrupted me. Leo, promise me one thing. What? Be with me. Not for 15 days, not for a month, but for the rest of our lives. My heart suddenly started racing, but I still managed to ask playfully. And if I don't? Then tomorrow's news will have a story about a man kidnapping a male university student in the middle of the night. I still didn't get what he meant and was laughing and teasing him. How? With your mind? The other end was quiet for a moment. Then I heard him say, Leo, come down. I'm outside your dorm. I sprinted downstairs like a madman and saw a black car parked at the entrance. Caleb was leaning against it. When he saw me, he started walking towards me. As I got closer, he pulled me into a tight hug. Baby, he held me tightly. Promise me, please. Why are you still here? Why didn't you go to the US? I couldn't bear to leave you. I opened my mouth, but I didn't know what to say. I just hugged him tighter. Let's get in the car, he said after a moment, letting me go and leading me to the car, then starting the engine. Where are we going? Where do you think? At the hotel entrance. Caleb pinned me against the wall and kissed me until I was breathless. But even then, he didn't seem to have any intention of taking the next step. I was getting frustrated. Promise me first, he said, holding my hands and pressing me firmly against the door. Leo, be with me. Promise me. I almost laughed out of sheer exasperation. Are you stupid? I kicked him lightly. If I wasn't going to be with you, why the hell would I be here? No, I need to hear you say it. I looked at his stubbornly serious face and finally gave in. Fine, I'll be with you. I'll be with you forever. The tension in his face instantly relaxed. He let out a sigh, as if he'd just received a holy decree, and then he kissed me again. Dawn was breaking. I rolled over and saw Caleb staring at me, his eyes wide open. Aren't you tired? I asked him. Not at all. Why? What are you thinking about? Nothing, he said, taking my hand and kissing it. I'm just so happy. You don't know. I've liked you since the first moment I saw you. But back then, you only had eyes for that scumbag Jason. I smiled and said, but I thought you hated me back then. You were always so mean. If I wasn't mean, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to stop myself from just stealing you away. I thought back to when I first arrived at Caleb's house that summer. Looking back now, it all made sense. He was always so thoughtful. When I said I wanted to pick fruit, he suggested we all go together. When I wanted to catch fish and shrimp, He was the one who enthusiastically borrowed tools from the neighbors. Even when I casually mentioned a dish I liked, it would appear on the dinner table the next day. And that time I cut my hand on the thorn, he was the one who found the antiseptic to clean my wound back at the house, while my boyfriend, Jason, was already lying in bed playing video games. I have 1 more year until I graduate. I'll come back right after, he said, pulling me into his arms. Don't be scared. I'll check in with you every day. I'll always pick up your calls and answer your messages. Baby, trust me. I told you I won't make you cry again. But hearing his words, I felt the tears welling up again. Caleb was just like his name suggested, a warm beam of light in those dark days. He had forced his way in with his grumpy attitude, and now he was refusing to leave. I knew he understood that the half-month deal was just me acting out. A scorched earth, self-destructive move I made when I was still scared and hurt. But he didn't care. And now I was certain he knew that this moment was different for both of us. You promised. You can't go back on your word. I mumbled into his chest. Never, he said, kissing me again and again, whispering in my ear. Puppy would never lie. That made me laugh. Then you better come back soon. Okay, he said softly,